Good morning, Dan and Amy. Brian Gumble, longtime sportscaster and TV host. He's had that long-running series on HBO called Real Sports.
Yeah, he was on the Today Show forever. Yes.
He closed his most recent edition of Real Sports on HBO with what else? Brian Gumble's words of wisdom on matters of race, and he chose that occasion to talk about the black tax, as he terms it. He and his friends, so he says, term it the black tax that Brian Gumble has paid for his 7 decades on this planet and is tired of paying.
The black tax. It's not an IRS thing. It's the added burden that comes with being black in America, and it's routinely paid, no matter how much education you have, how much money you make, or how much success you've earned. The black tax is about more than just the added stares, whispers, and suspicions when you're out and about. It's about the many instances of disrespect and incivility your color seems to engender, and being expected to somehow always restrain yourself lest you not be what white Americans are never asked to be, a credit to your race. It's about living a life that included your father having to leave home to earn his law degree even though he was an honor student and a decorated war veteran. It's about your son getting arrested for doing nothing more than walking while black. And it's about having to be more concerned than your white friends and associates for the safety of your grandkids. It's about the day in and day out fatigue of trying to explain the obvious to the clueless. It's about being asked to overlook blue failings and white failings so they can be conveniently viewed as black issues. It's about being asked by so many what they should do or say about race when the easy answer lies in the privacy of each person's heart. It's the black tax. It's paid daily by me and every person of color in this country, and frankly, it is exhausting. I've been paying the black tax in America for almost 72 years now, long enough that I shouldn't have to ask others to simply accept one very basic reality, that our black lives matter.
For more on that commentary, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Latasha Fields, co-founder and overseer of Our Report Ministries and Publications. She's also the founder and teacher at a group Christian Academy, Homeschool Academy. She's the director of Christian Home Educator Support System and state coordinator of Illinois for parentalrights.org. Latasha, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan, for having me. It's a pleasure.
What do you say? How do you react to what Brian Gumble said about the black tax?
This whole issue with Black Lives Matters is a vexation. It's exhausting. But I definitely, my husband and I, we beg to differ. Because we believe the smoking gun, if you will, is not the things that he stated, but for us and many of us is the Democratic policies. Because what we fail to realize as Blacks, African Americans, is that we don't have to succumb to these disproportionate realities that are presented before us. And so that's what we're trying to get our people and those that support the truth, if you will, that this does not have to be, that the problems that we're facing, the Black socioeconomic problems that we're facing, it starts with us first. We're accountable for our own actions. And so that's what Black Lives Matter. And then this hypocrisy with this movement is just egregious. It's just absolutely egregious, because what we're seeing all over this world is that obviously Black lives doesn't matter until a white person does something or a white cop does something. And this is not to say that the police brutality is not inconceivably wrong. It's absolutely appalling. But what about the Black abortion rate? They don't want to talk about that. And what about this disheartening of this Black on Black crime? What do we say to those things? You know, I've been really following and studying the Black Lives Matters movement and agenda, and it is woefully demonic.
Well, what is their agenda?
For us, what we're seeing in black and white, it's the LGBT movement for sure, and it's dismantling America's Western civilization of heterosexual families. It wants to dismantle the nuclear family. And that is the bottom line. It wants to destroy this country. And it's using Black people. We're like the arrows in their quiver, if you will, to destroy this country. And on top of that, destroying us from within. And it's an explosive thing that is just, it's just mind-boggling. uh, what this agenda is about. Because if you really, anybody, black or white, if you really cared about life and the lifespan of anybody, every life will be valued. That is not a cliche. And people, toss that around and come against that like that's some kind of cliche. That's not a cliche. There's no immeasurable value you can put on a person's life. And when you got black women murdering their babies at upward 46%, how dare you tell me that Black lives matter? How could they matter when we are allowing black women to kill their own offspring? How could they matter when our black men are killing other black men? Are we not our brother's keeper? So it's hypocrisy. It's woefully hypocrisy.
Well, why?
And until blacks go ahead, Dad. I'm sorry.
No, I don't want to interrupt, but I mean the violence this weekend and really every weekend in Chicago. 61 more people shot, 15 fatally, including 1-year-old last and a 10-year-old. Last week it was a 3-year-old and a couple of teenagers, in addition to the that were part of the carnage, and you get the same platitudes from the political leaders in Chicago. Enough is enough. I'm tired of going to funerals. I'm tired of the violence. We need help from the community. Why is it, do you think, that that you have elected officials in Chicago, be they black or white, be they mayors or members of the city council, that just are never held accountable for the carnage that happens on their watch by their constituents?
Because first of all, Danny, we all know what we're seeing is policies. That's the problem. They have a good talk, but they're not doing anything to change the policies. Because people, you got to understand, even when you read Black Lives Matter, if you don't read it with the lenses that we're reading, everything on the surface sounds wonderful. It sounds good. But at the same time, it's hypocrisy. That's the definition of hypocrisy. You're saying one thing, but you support and you do something else. And that's the problem with these leaders, like you say, black or white. They're saying all these things on the campaign trails, if you will, when something happens, but yet you continue to devise policies that are completely and woefully contrary to the way people live their lives. Regularly, even yesterday, my husband and I, we were at an event. You're always talking to black people that from the heart, from the core of our heart, their interest does not lie in the Democratic Party. And so we're constantly asking them, why do you continue to vote against your values? Why do you continue to vote against your beliefs and your interests? And so we got to understand, and I've said it many times before, until leaders, the church, people, parents begin to look at seriously, regardless if you believe in Jesus Christ or not in the things of God, until people begin to look at family differently, nothing is going to change in this country, because everything that we can get on the radios and the social medias and talk about, every issue that we can talk about that is plaguing our society, it is the deterioration and the dismantling of family. The enemy is attacking family. He's not just attacking money. He's not just attacking legislative policy. It is to disrupt and to destroy family. And until we see that, be it black or white family, needs to be restored, and we need to be encouraging moms and dads to take responsibility back over their children, we're going to continue to have these problems. That is the problem. They do not care about family.
Robert Johnson, the founder of BET, billionaire businessman, he said last week that neither political party is serving black Americans particularly well, and he called for the creation of a third party for black Americans only. What do you think about that?
I don't necessarily think we need a third party. I just think we need the parties that we have to understand what family means, what it means to have a democracy. Now, I do agree the Republicans don't necessarily represent me either, because their voice is silent. So if I win and if I vote, I'm definitely going to cast my vote to the Republican ticket, because one thing I do say, when you read their platform, that the platform of the Republican Party is definitely the American values. It's definitely parental rights, biblical worldview, Judeo-Christian values. But in terms of strategically advocating for blacks, you don't necessarily see that. But the flip side, I think who should take the lead for the problems that are plaguing Black America is Blacks. And so we're seeing that on the rise. And so I think that's what needs to happen. But we also do need our white counterparts to come to the forefront, and for the Republican Party to stop being afraid, if you will, to speak what is right. You're not racist, or you're not just advocating just for Blacks. What is happening in this country is wrong. And I do believe there's a cultural and spiritual aspect of racism in this country. But then I also believe you cannot create a law in D.C. to make people like you. The only law that can transform the minds and the hearts of a people is the law of Christ, whether people want to receive it or not. And so that's the law that needs to be encouraged. There needs to be a transformation within an individual. And then on the flip side of that, what I want to say to Black America, if white people don't like you, so what? Why does that hinder your life? Why does that emotional thought process hinder your life? Because me and my husband ask Blacks all the time, well, do we live in a different country? Because we've done fairly well with all this racism. We've made moves. We take care of our children. We've done right. We have not succumbed to these so-called systematic racism that they say is happening. No, what's systematic and strategically is the Democratic Party that goes all the way back to the 1800s. That's what has not changed. The big switch was Blacks. You switched. The parties didn't switch. You switched. You stopped upholding your values and what you stood for. You switched. Because now all you see is immorality in our community. They don't want to talk about the fornication that's happening in our community. You know, I've been blamed. You know, you don't want to call Black women promiscuous. Well, I had a baby at 17. Was that not being promiscuous? We have to call these things out. This unwed pregnancy, these teen pregnancies, this abortion, the juvenile detention rate, the high incarceration rate, the Black-on-Black crime, the education inequality, Black kids being trapped and failing schools. This is policies, Dan, and Blacks have succumbed to them. And until they wake up and see how they have been bewitched, there's not going to be any difference.
Now we have an
because
election.
Our ancestors did not fight for this. Martin Luther King and all the civil rights leaders, they did not fight for 50 years later for us to succumb to government dependency, welfare dependency, big government. This is a capitalist society. This is free enterprise. What happened to trade skills, trade schools, education, vocational school, things that Booker T. Washington and Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman and all these wonderful patriots stood on? And then they want to say American is intrinsically racist. Well, how do you account for all the prosperous and successful Blacks in this country? Granted, how do you explain Barack Obama? Granted, I detest his policy, but how do you explain a Black man that not had one term as president, but two? How do you explain that, Black America? How do you explain all the Black celebrities that want to raise their voices about America ain't great? Well, how do you explain your $1 million? How do you explain your gated community? How do you explain your achievement if America is so racist? That's what I want to ask Black celebrities and actors and politicians and all these wonderful Black people that are successful. Granted, we all are roughly less than 1% of the wealth in this country, but even in the 1%, how do you explain it? Oh, barriers? Of course we have barriers. Of course we've seen struggle, but how do you explain, I've heard recently, America was never great. Well, look like the day that you succeeded and got a #1 record or a Grammy Award, look like that was the day America was great then. It was great for you. So that's bull. Yes, we are facing all kinds of disparities, but that has nothing to do with our achievement. That's what we need to wake up to.
I just want to go back to school for a second because you're an educator and you run a homeschool academy. A Christian academy in Yorkville, out in the far western burbs, Parkview Christian Academy, sent a letter to the public health commissars as well as the Illinois State Board of Education commissar, saying, among other things, nowhere in the 6 pages of guidelines for reopening schools. Nowhere in those 6 pages do I see any citation to the United States Constitution, Illinois Department of Health Act, Illinois School Code, or any legitimate legal source for that matter, which purports to delegate your administrative agencies any lawful authority to mandate such rules upon private or public schools, or more directly, the parents and school children of our state. Health authorities cannot promulgate and enforce rules which merely have a tendency to prevent the spread of contagious and infectious disease. And they cite a court case on the matter. Basically, the message from Parkview Christian Academy to these state actors, Illinois State Board of Education, and Dr. Ezike, the Illinois Department of Health director, we will determine what additional health and safety protocols we might choose to add to our current guidelines for the upcoming year. Again, with respect to schooling and the importance of education, and you mentioned the failing schools in Chicago, which are well documented. How important is it for you to get, in your homeschooling families, to make sure they are not entangled in state restrictions and we can proceed with education as we've historically provided it, particularly in the good settings, come the fall?
Yeah, I agree exactly with the letter that the church sent. There is no constitutional amendment where the federal government, our state can control education. So I completely agree with that statement. And you guys know my advocacy is to get them out, because it's a second biggest issue, if you will, over the whole coronavirus epidemic or pandemic, if you will. There's an educational pandemic as well. So I am not an advocate for public education regardless, period. My advocacy is to get them out. My advocacy is to create your own schools. It's time for us to pick up the torch and stop fighting for these governmental schools. We're in America. We have all kind of privileges in this country. This is a great country, and we need to take advantage of some of the liberties and freedoms that we have. And we have the freedom and the right to create our own schools. And so instead of fighting them to change their schools, hey, mine is a mass exodus. Give them their schools. Yes, I understand the tax dollars. That's another conversation for another day. But until we can get those policies changed, we need to get our kids out of the school, because even with the health guidelines that's coming into the fall, July 1st, I have a Zoom presentation that we're going to launch to discuss the academic and the secular humanistic part of what's going to happen to our children here in Illinois, July 1st, where this LGBT history curriculum will become mandated, will become law. And so our children will be exposed to hypersexualizing them and indoctrinating them and desensitizing them in terms of the complete LGBT curriculum movement. And this is not just about their cultural contribution to society. This is about their sexual behaviors and preferences, and so parents need to exercise their parental rights and their school choice. This is a warning. This is not a game. Everybody's worrying about these kids being valedictorian and accelerating their academics, and I'm not downsizing that. But what matters more to parents? That's what I want to just have a conversation with parents. What matters more to you, especially if you are believing in Jesus Christ, that they just be successful and they go to hell and their souls hanging in the balance? You prefer them to be desensitized about the heterosexual relationship, that male and female is who reproduce the world, which is normal, which is not a distortion of God's creation. You're okay with your children learning that because you learn about algebra? Really? That's my advocacy, Dan. It hurts because our children's souls are in danger, and all parents want to worry about is education in terms of the math and the sciences and the social studies. Look, this is a warning. I'm not even concerned about the health right now in terms of those guidelines, because you can pull them out of school. Get those kids out of public education. Stop being worried about their academics in terms of the core. They're going to get those things. Create your own schools, homeschool your children, connect with people like me. There's millions of us across this country. You don't have to just call me, and connect with families. Tell your pastors, get your kids out of the school. Again, stop being so concerned with academics. If you are a believer, now if you're not a Christian, maybe that's not a concern to you. I don't know. People have many religious beliefs. But if you're not concerned about the weightier matters of your child's soul, with them literally being destroyed in their mind, you know what I mean? And then we worry about academics. Look at George Soros and all these people, Bill Gates. They are very intelligent, very smart people, have high academic levels. But look at their character. Look what they promote. That's what you want for your children? Go ahead. Let them be accelerated in all the academics. But where would they be in their character? Where would they be in their character? How would they view the world? How are you going to answer God in the day of judgment when blood will be on your hands for what you allowed these systems to teach your babies? And then I get so sick of parents being egregious behind caring for their children in this capacity. If you wasn't ready to be a parent, you shouldn't have had them. You can't be egregious because we've been conditioned to outsource our children 6 to 8 hours a day. How dare we as parents get upset when we have to take full responsibility over the entire welfare of our children? Stop that, parents. Stop getting upset because you have to teach your children. Stop thinking you're inadequate to teach your baby. You are the best teacher for your babies. Those are your babies. No one in this world can give them what you can give them. And whatever tools and resources you think you lack, call on your sister or brother. Call on your mama, your pastor, your friends, family. Information is readily available in this age of social media and internet. There is no excuse for parents to be egregious behind caring for their children in this capacity. There's no excuse for this.
She is.
And I'm sorry, but this is no excuse for this.
She is Latasha Field. She's the co-founder and overseer of Our Report Ministries and publication. She's the founder and teacher of a group Christian Academy. She's the director of Christian Home Educator Support System and the state coordinator in Illinois for parentalrights.org. Parentalrights.org. Latasha, always a pleasure. Appreciate your passion.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, have a blessed one.
You too. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line. Coming up on Chicago's Morning Answer.
We'll switch gears and talk about secular humanist things like economic performance at 8:38.
But now let's head into that newsroom. Here is Mike Scott. Good morning, Mike.
Amy and Dan, good morning. 79 degrees. At least 11 are dead after gunmen attacked the Pakistani stock exchange in Karachi. The director of the stock exchange saying 4 came in from the parking lots, threw grenades at the main entrance, and then began shooting. 2 Oklahoma police officers are in critical condition after a shooting this morning early in Tulsa. A manhunt is underway for the suspect considered armed and dangerous. Johns Hopkins University says global coronavirus death toll now over 500,000. U.S. Secretary of Health and Human Services Alex Azar says the nation is at a critical fulcrum point.
The window is closing. We have to act, and people as individuals have to act responsibly.
In the U.S., now more than 2.5 million COVID-19 cases. After 126 years, Mississippi will no longer fly a state flag with a Confederate emblem. Another shooting here in Chicago overnight, or another shooting overnight near Seattle's Capitol Hill organized protest, or CHOP zone. 2 critically wounded. Here in Chicago, activists and local leaders are calling for more state and federal aid.